how to set yourself up for success in 2026 correctly. Because I don't want you to set more goals and more New Year's resolutions and never actually do them. On today's episode, we're going to talk all about how to set yourself up for success in 2026 correctly. And I say this because I really want to focus on first the number one mistake that people make when they're setting goals, they're planning, they're vision casting, they're just like preparing for anything. The number one mistake that people make when they are trying to plan or set goals is that they forget to reflect. They're so excited. They just jump in. They're like, I want to dream big. I want to set big goals. I want to make this much money. I want to live this place. I want to travel here. Like they're just thinking about all the fun stuff. And I feel like people do this because like our brains, we have the two brains, the primitive brain and our prefrontal cortex brain. And our primitive brain wants to seek pleasure and avoid pain and do those things as conveniently as possible. And so if we're thinking about the number one mistake I'll share with you guys in a second, that causes a lot of pain, a lot of discomfort. And our brain does not want that. Our brain wants pleasure and convenience. And so our brain is like, let's just dream big, 2026, big goals, new year, new me. It's a lot of dopamine, right? Our brain just wants that. But the number one mistake that people make is they don't reflect. They don't want to look at all the bad things. They don't want to look at the things that didn't go well. They don't want to look at the things that they need to improve on. And that is the mistake, because then you never know what actually didn't work out. Actually, what did work out? What do I want to do differently? They're just like, I'm just going to go in, and they're just going to set New Year's resolutions that they don't complete again, year after year after year after year. So I'm titling this episode, How to Set Yourself Up for Success in 2026 Correctly, because I don't want you to set more goals and more New Year's resolutions and never actually do them. Okay. And so with that, you want to reflect so that you know what you actually did that didn't really work well, so you stop doing it. But you also want to know what did work well so that you do more of that. And then thirdly, you want to know what you can do next and differently to improve so that you can actually be a new you in the new year. Okay. And so I'm going to walk you guys through a couple of different steps that I walk every single client through. It's kind of like an evaluation process. We're going to reflect first, and we're going to first reflect on all the things that were amazing, because once again, your brain, even though it wants to avoid pain, our brain, most people's brains are wired for like negativity. That's why they don't want to reflect, right? That's why you don't want to reflect, because your brain immediately goes to all the bad things of like, I didn't reach this goal and I didn't do this and I thought I would be further along, etc. And so we want to first ground our brain in all of the things that actually were amazing, right? And I just want you to make a list, write it down, okay? And I want you to get very, very, very specific. For example, I had a really hard conversation with my husband, but what was amazing was that we were united afterwards, and I stepped in with boldness and courage to have this hard conversation, right? So that's an amazing thing that happened, okay? So get very specific on that. Let me see what this one was. Oh, I wanted to share really quickly too that, again, remember how I said that our brains only look at the bad? That's why we start with all the good stuff, because we want to remind our brain that it wasn't all bad. That was actually good, so that when we do get into the things that didn't work well, then we can kind of come with a more grounded mindset, if that makes sense. But I wanted to share something that happened. We were at, I think, a Christmas party with some friends, and they wanted to do reflections, some like just a high and a low for the year. And I felt so bad because I was like, man, I don't think I have any lows. Like, I just kept telling myself that. I felt so bad. They were like sharing, like 2 people had gone. They were like sharing. They're like, here's my high, here's my low. And I just kept telling myself, I was like, man, I don't feel like I have any lows. Now, here's the thing. That does not mean no bad things happened to me in 2026. I literally, as I was like writing out the notes here for this podcast episode, I was like, it's not that I'm lying. but I feel like there's something wrong with my brain to where I cannot see the bad. And so this is why I also have to do evaluations, because I need to come back to reality. I was like, oh, that thing didn't actually go according to plan, and that's okay. But I feel like even when things go horribly wrong or just really hard things happen, I feel like the highs overshadow the lows. It's kind of like when I'm hiking up this huge mountain and it's so hard and it's so just like strenuous, and I get to the top of the mountain and I'm like, I just see and I'm wowed and I'm in awe of God's creation. It's like I don't have any time to think about the trek up. I don't have any time to look down and be like, oh, well, that's where I tripped, and that's where I hurt my knee, and that's where I scraped my, elbow. And also, if you look, I burned myself right here, but that's okay. And yeah, I just feel like, so I feel like that's my mentality. And again, sometimes I don't know if it's a bad thing. I don't know yet. But I just feel like maybe I've just gotten to this point where I only revel in the mountaintops, right? Unfortunately, my brain is always wired for mountaintops, I guess. And it's funny because I think I've shared on the podcast before, but I feel like my husband gets really, maybe not annoyed, but it's hard for him to receive maybe my personality of like, I don't know how that thing is going to happen, but it's going to happen because God told me it's going to happen. And he's like, but let's be logical here. Let's be realistic. And I'm just like, I don't know. Maybe something's wrong with my brain, you guys. Let me know if you guys can relate or not relate. I just feel like my brain is so focused on like, I'm at the mountaintop. Nothing else matters. If you are a woman in business, ministry, or influence, and you love what you are doing, but you are exhausted, you are burned out, you're overwhelmed, just know that there's nothing wrong with you. There's just a misalignment in what God has called you to and what we are striving for. And so if that's you, I invite you inside of the Overflow Collective. This is a community space for you to get clarity, for you to come into realignment, for you to get encouragement and support as you continue on making the impact that God has called you to by stewarding all your resources well, not just your financial resources, but also your time, your energy, your efforts, your yeses, your nos, stewarding all of that well so that you can continue to be on bigger mission, the bigger mission that God has called you to. The Overflow Collective has coaching, community, and practical support so that you stop the hustle, you stop the striving, and you step into full surrender and experiencing all of the peace and joy and freedom that God has for you as you partner with Him to usher in more heaven on earth wherever He sends you. You can learn more about the Overflow Collective by clicking the link. But all that to say, let's get back to the reflections. One, what were all the amazing things that happened during your life? And I want you to sit there for a good 20-30 minutes, because you're probably going to write like 5 things down, and then your brain is going to be like, well, I guess only 5 things were amazing this year. No, keep going. Use your brain. Push your brain to see and think about all the amazing things that happened. And then once you feel like you are completed, with that, I want you to ask yourself, why was this thing amazing? So again, for example, there was a hard conversation. My husband and I had this conversation. I felt like I came in with a lot of boldness and courage. Why this was amazing was because in the past, I would try to lower my emotions or whatever it was, right? So it's like in the past, maybe, why was it amazing? Because it actually created unity. My boldness and my courage did not take away things from my marriage or from my husband, but actually it united us, okay? And then the third question here is, what made it amazing? So why was it amazing, or what made it amazing? So why was it amazing? It created unity. What made it amazing is a little bit different. What made it amazing was I stepped in with boldness and courage. What made it amazing was my husband holding space and creating that safety and security for me to share whatever it is that I'm sharing. Okay, so those are two different questions too. Okay, so again, reflecting on the amazing things. So the things that worked out well. What were the amazing things? Why was it amazing? And what do you think made them amazing? Because here's what we want to do with that information for 2026. We want to recreate that. We want to do more of that. If I want more unity in my marriage, I'm going to step in with more boldness and courage. My husband's going to step in with more safety and security, right? So we want to know the information so that we can recreate it in 2026. And then let's go to the not so great things, right? Maybe the fights, maybe the arguments, maybe the disconnect, right? That we had. Why was it not so great? Just be real with yourself. Just be honest. Why was it not so great? I'll just make up an example, but it probably did happen. Maybe I yelled at my husband because I was overstimulated, because I didn't get my self-care time, because I said yes to too many things, and so I overcommitted, right? So why? Okay, so that's what happened. Not so great. I yelled at my husband. Why was it not so great? Because I was not being in alignment with who God has called me to be, right? Slow to anger, patient, merciful, compassionate, kind, loving, okay? What made this moment not great? I was not acting as a daughter of God, right? I was overstimulated. I wasn't giving myself enough rest, okay? So now we know what not to repeat, what patterns to not do in the new year. I'm not going to sacrifice. It's going to be a non-negotiable of every single day spending time with God. It is like having a meal, like eating food, eating my lunch, my breakfast, or my dinner. I'm not going to compromise those anymore. Absolutely not. I'm not going to overcommit to other things if it's going to make me remove something that is so crucial to literally my life and my family and my marriage, right? So I'm not going to keep doing those things. So again, spend some time here. Ask yourself, what was not great? Why wasn't it great? And what do you think contributed to making it not so great, right? It didn't go according to plan. It didn't work well, whatever is in that category. And we're going to use that information for 2026. We're not going to repeat those things. In fact, I want you to troubleshoot for those things. All the reasons why it, what made these moments not great. I want you to troubleshoot, right? And say, okay, cool. How am I going to solve for this in 2026? Okay. And then lastly, what do we want to do new or shift or change for 2026? Okay. So we know all the amazing things that happened. We know the things that were not so great. And then we also want to set new goals. This is the last thing you do that most people do first. What do we want to do new in 2026? Okay. And I also want to say that how you get somewhere matters. Okay. When you're thinking about these big dreams and big goals, it actually really matters how you get there, the roadmap, the way you set your goals, the priorities you have. I talk about this in the Overflow Collective in my Sustainable Success System. There's an actual part for understanding and figuring out what your priorities are, how to set goals, how to create action steps for your goals, but then how to implement and take action consistently, but without the burnout. And so the reason why I put here about your big goals for 2026 here is that how you get there matters, is because I was talking, I have a friend who is, I would say, very successful in the worldly ways, right? Maybe even in the, like, it's okay to be successful in this way in the kingdom or in the world. That's what I would say. Just very successful. And I was thinking about, it was interesting because I was like, oh yeah, I'd love to hear how they do the stuff that they do, how they achieve their goals. But then after I thought about it a little bit, I kind of was like, oh, maybe I actually don't want to know. Because here's why. How they got there is actually not how I want to get there. And the reason why I know that, like, I don't know every intricate detail of their life, but what I do know is that there's a lot of overwhelm. There's a lot of burnout. There's a lot of overworking. There's a lot of sacrificing the things that I deem important to me. And I know that it's important to them too, but the success seems to be overshadowing the other things right now. And so the reason why I bring this up for you guys is, as you are setting these big goals and as you're making these action plans and taking steps towards these big things that you have for your life or that God has for you, I just want you to ask yourself, and even more importantly, ask God, how? How do you want me to get there? What do you want me to do? What do you want for my life? This is actually step 1 of the Sustainable Success System, is vision casting and dreaming with God. Here's everything I want for my life, God. But what do you want? What do you want for my life? How do you want me to get there? What do you want me to sacrifice? What do you not want me to sacrifice? What do you want me to say yes to? And what do you want me to say no to? And so that's kind of the things that I do as I reflect on, the past. This could literally be the past year, the past month, or even the past week. What were the things that worked well? What didn't go well? What do I want to do differently? And more importantly, how can I be in alignment with God? How can I partner with God as I set these big goals, these big visions? I don't think that God doesn't want good things for you. In fact, I think that as a good father, he wants to just fill all the desires of our hearts, but also just know and understand that he has bigger vision, bigger mission, and so much more for you. And if you're so willing to come into alignment with his will, everything that you receive, everything that you get is going to be so much bigger, so much better than anything you could ever ask or imagine. Are you a woman in ministry, business, or influence who has a deep desire to be in alignment with God so that you can pour from that overflow of peace and joy and true freedom to your community, to your audience, and to the people that God has called you to impact? If yes, I invite you to join us inside of the Overflow Collective. This is a community of women who have a deep desire for deeper intimacy with God so that we can be on mission, stewarding everything that God has given us for his kingdom and in partnership with him to usher in more heaven here on earth. We are women who want to stop striving so that we can start surrendering and truly experiencing everything that God has for us. If you are just tired of the hustling, the burnout, the misalignment, the overwhelm, the chaos, the anxiety and stress of being in ministry, being in business, being in positions of influence, then I invite you to join us in the Overflow Collective. You can click the show notes, find the description anywhere you're watching or listening to this episode, and I'll see you inside.